one. Ron produced two drafts for Transformers the movie. One about which little is known that you can ask him about in a few moments, and the one which would be relevant to the film. Neil was, as many of you know, the voice of Film Crusher. Took 6 shots, slags, point blank, and all-pointer.
Some long, drawn-out, bizarre question that had nothing to do with anything. And God bless him, he tried to answer it. He tried to make sense of what I was saying. And we didn't let him know until after that I was just messing with him. And at that point, we hadn't even met. But I was being a jerk. And we've been friends ever since.
There you go.
No, he didn't.
Okay, we're still getting feedback back here. Yeah.
Well, I guess I'll start. I'm going to use the microphone because I almost blew my voice out trying to talk to folks in the hall. And, I'm Neil Ross. You'll probably know me best as Springer or Hook or Slag or Bone Crusher. If you're into G.I. Joe, some of you may remember our old pal Shipwreck.
Yeah.
And now let me introduce you to the lovely Ron Friedman.
Honored Rabbi, Mrs. Phil, no, that was the bar mitzvah speech. So easy to get confused. I am Ron Friedman. It's amazing. The only people interested in me lately are at Forest Lawn. But it's great to see this turnout. And for years after writing The Transformers the movie, complete strangers would stop me on the street and say, "You son of a..." I was 6 years old and I went to see the movie and you killed Optimus Prime. Would you sign my underwear? I should let you know that I also created G.I. Joe, Yo Joe. I got $1,000 for Yo Joe. I didn't get anything for Cobra. And also, I mostly wrote a lot of half-hour and hour stuff and was cited by the Writers Guild 2 years ago for having written for 5 of their 101 best-written series. The Andy Griffith Show, All in the Family, Get Smart, Barney Miller, and The Odd Couple. Exactly. And because you watched all of that, none of you went to medical school. But I take no responsibility, and I'm thrilled to be on this panel with some brilliantly accomplished writers, actors, and people on the run. Do not identify them, please. Thank you.
I'm Doug Booth, and I actually had a very marginal role on the Transformers movie. I had to read the script several times. And contributed...
Doug was the producer on the movie, by the way.
Contributed a few lines to it. I did write a lot of episodes for the first generation of Transformers, which was just great fun. I worked with Ron on the greatest action series that never got produced, Air Raiders.
Oh, absolutely right.
It was sort of Robin Hood meets Dune without sandworms. But it was still good. We didn't miss the sandworms. And I had a lot of fun with G.I. Joe, where I was sort of a supervising producer on that. And I just thought that was a wonderful series as well. So.
Thank you.
I also had a kind of a marginal role on Transformers the movie. I'm Perceptor. Also, a Quintesson. And I loved it today. Someone said, came up to me and said, "You got no pictures to sign with the Quintesson?" And I said, "No." I said, "Oh, fine." That's the first time I've ever been asked, which is lovely. I also do a lot of other voice stuff. I was on a series called Ben 10 as Grandpa Max. A lot of video games from StarCraft, Warcraft, Diablo, Fallout 3, Fallout 4, God of War, a bunch. Metal Gear Solid. Metal Gear Solid. And thrilled to be here because number one, to see you guys. Number two, to see all the folks from Gen 1. We're still alive. 40 years, even though we both live in Los Angeles, it's just so great to see each other again. Alan Oppenheimer and Clive Revel, who I, as a young actor, I worshipped this man. So it's like, and these guys were all working on the Transformers. There are a lot of reasons why the Transformers are still around, and a lot of it is because they had incredible scripts and had an incredible cast of serious, I mean, real actors. So I'm blessed. Say what?
Every other syllable we're hearing, you have to talk closer to the mic.
Oh, actually, I'm only saying every stuff. I'm glad. That's a talent I have.
Paul's never seen a mic before.
Is this thing on? Okay, is that better?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Most of what I say doesn't really matter anyway, so just ask my daughters.
Amen.
Just happy to be here.
I'm Flint, Dille. Was anybody here at the thing last night? Yeah, okay. Because there's nobody who is here now who was last night that wants to hear me say anything ever again. It went on for like 4 hours or whatever. So, yeah, I was various different things on Transformers and Joe and all of them. You know that already. So let's get to the question.
Hello. Is this on? Okay, cool. During the recording of the movie, there were a lot of celebrities on there, Lionel Stander and Orson Welles. Were there any funny stories getting these screen actors adapted to the mic?
Yes.
Can you share them?
The one I remember that he tells on himself is Hot Rod.
Judd
Judd Nelson tells the story himself. So if you've heard it, you're going to hear it again. Judd was used to, when you're working with an actor, you look at the actor you're talking to. And he would do that over and over again. And Wally would say, no, you have to keep looking at the microphone. You can't look over there and talk. We don't have you on the microphone. So every time you turn, you're, oh, okay. So it took a while for him. And after a while, he actually said, look, guys, I'm not going to swear the way he did, but he said, guys, I'm sorry, I don't know what the F I'm doing. Yeah. So that was basically it. The other thing was we never saw, I don't know, unless you were there, we never got to be there when Mr. Wells was there.
Oh, I was there when I was Wells. Oh yeah. As a matter of fact, I was the only, I think, like adult there. What happened? When Orson Welles was there, Wally had this really scary tape of Orson Welles just reaming out some board. Have you guys heard that tape? I'm sure that's around Voice World everywhere. I think it's on YouTube, but he's just given somebody.
I would never direct anyone in Shakespeare, any living actor in Shakespeare, to what you're doing to me right now.
Yeah, it was harsh. So none of the adults wanted to be there, but since I was like the lowest producer who happened to be in town, I had to be there. And so Orson, the big moment comes, and we're at Wally Studios, and Orson Welles was he couldn't really, he was not in great health. I mean, the truth is he died a week afterwards. Okay, so like really not in great health. And so he came in, he was, I guess originally he was in a wheelchair, and then there were sort of entrance problems, and then he was in a walker, and then finally he walked the last few steps over to his thing. And we thought it was really bad, but what was funny is we had all the time where the tech guys were moving the microphones around and while he's testing everything out, because we didn't want to blow it. Okay, everybody's afraid. However, so I'm sitting in the room talking to him, explaining to him that he's playing, he said, I hear I'm playing an entire planet. At this point, Orson Welles looked like an entire planet. No, I mean, he's a big guy. He's probably, well over 6 feet, and kind of that around, take the combined weight probably of everybody in the room, and we're close. And, but actually talking to him, you know, I explained the planet thing. You read a couple of his lines. He could not have been friendlier. There was no, you know, I didn't get roto-rooted. None of that happened. And I was listening to a lot of Mercury Theater, you know, audio cassettes at the time. And so I was talking to him about Mercury Theater, and I think he was just so happy not to talk about Citizen Kane that, you know, was somebody who, you know, at the time was in my 20s. But he was great. I mean, so all those stories weren't true. Wally didn't get reamed. He got it almost in a take. He was a little wheezy, and so we had to cut that out. And but I have nothing but good stuff to say about Orson Welles. That was the thing.
I knew Orson Welles, and I have a story that you've never heard by way of Lucille Ball. I wrote a show called Lucy in London, where Lucille Ball went to London, and she told me a story about Orson. When she and Desi formed Desilu Studios, Desi said, "What are we going to do next?" And she said, "Well, what's Orson doing?" And Desi checked, and Orson was living at the Chateau Marmont on credit. He hadn't paid his room rent in 6 months, and he was charging liquor stores and tailor bills and hookers to credit cards. So Lucy said, "Let's get Orson, let's give him our place in Palm Springs, pay his bills at the hotel, and he'll write something for us." So they made the deal. 6 months goes by, the bills are coming in from Palm Springs for hookers and tailors and all the rest. And Desi woke Lucy at 4 in the morning with his gun in hand, and he says, "I'm going to the desert and putting this gun up where the sun don't shine." Lucy said Desi was crazy when he was angry, and he was crazy. He drove to Palm Springs. He came back. She said, "Did you kill him?" He said, "Not yet." He said, "I've given him 6 weeks to come in with something, or I will kill him." 4 days later, by limo from Palm Springs, a script came in, and it was brilliant. They shot it without a single change. Orson directed it. It won the Sylvania, the Peabody, and every other award around. And then Lucy and Desi said, "All right, Orson, let's do some more." He says, "No, I must rest." She had to wrestle the gun out of Desi's hand. Years later, at the Polo Lounge, I see Orson Welles sitting at a table, or sitting at 12 tables, because the cheeks in his ass were in different time zones. I went over to Orson, introduced myself. He had met me before, he remembered. And I said, "I have to ask you, is this story true?" Lucille Ball told it to me, and he nodded throughout. And he said the liquor bills were bigger than the hooker bills. And then he said, "I wish Amigo were still here. He would give me work to do." He said, "But the fault, dear Brutus, lies not in our stars, but in ourselves, where we let schmucks tell us what we should do." That's my Orson story.
Thank you.
Hello. In the behind the scenes of Transformers the movie, I heard somebody say that Frank Miller, the comic artist, like had some input in it. I think it was you who said it. And if he did, what input did he put into it? Oh, and also, was Galactus any influence on Unicron, on the development of Unicron?
Not as far as I was concerned, but it's a collaborative effort, and Flint did brilliant work on both G.I. Joe and the Transformers.
Hey, you did Andy Griffith's show. You win this one.
Yeah, I got Dead Stars.
That's happy. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I know for Frank. I told this story last night, so I won't make it too long. But I mean, what happened was, and you already know the punchline. But what happened was, we were working on the Killing Optimus scene, which, you know, Ron basically, you know, beat out the whole thing, but there were 500 little things we had to get in there for a variety of reasons. So Steve Gerber and I were working on it. And Steve Gerber was, you think of him as G.I. Joe story editor, but he actually came on to Transformers for a while.
Howard the Duck.
Yeah, he created Howard the Duck, and an absolutely brilliant guy. I mean, he was, you know, maybe the best story editor of the age. But anyway, so Steve and I are working on the scene, and Steve's got this guy coming over for lunch who's moving out from New York. and in walks somebody that reminds me of John Lennon or something. I mean, at this point Frank had really long hair, and he's got a bag over his head, and I mean, Frank on his best day, just looks very striking character. And so he's working on a Batman comic book, and he's trying to figure out how to have Batman and Superman fight each other. We're trying to figure out how to have Optimus and Megatron fight each other. And kind of by the time we walked out, at probably 7 o'clock, nobody actually ever went to lunch. And we were just there, and we walk out, and we've cracked we've got the scene done with Optimus and Megatron, and Frank has figured out how Batman can fight Superman. And so for just geek history, just think about that. That's Dark Knight and Transformers the movie crashing into each other. And that was the first time I ever met Frank. I mean, Frank, I don't have better friends in the world now, but we have known him ever since. It was great. 10 years later, the other odd thing is I was saying I wanted Optimus's death to impact people the way John Wayne's death, because Optimus and John Wayne were always linked in my mind. And Death in the Alamo, which is what impacted my childhood. I didn't know Davy Crockett died. I was 6 years old when the movie came out. And he said, "Didn't you ever see that movie, The 300 Spartans?" I said, "Well, actually, no." 10 years later, Frank and I are on a boat researching 300. So it's like, that's how long that that day played out.
I think so.
Yeah.
I haven't the vaguest idea. Because what happened was I did this so long ago, and I realized that those that love it, it's ever fresh. And it's not ever fresh with me. I have to refresh my fading memory sometime to remember what it is that I did. All I know is I've been proud of it for years, and other than people cursing me for killing Optimus Prime, it's been nothing but successful. So I'm sorry I can't give you any definitive response. My ignorance is vast.
Well, the truth is, Ron, I mean, let's set this straight one time. Ron and I, and Ron mostly in the beginning and me later on, we did not kill, we were acting under orders. It was Hasbro that killed Optimus Prime. Okay? When we're in the Nuremberg of dead cartoon heroes, we were very low-level functionaries who, were, doing what we were told to do. But then later on...
Yeah, whatever happened to Hasbro? I haven't heard of them lately.
To answer your question, and the answer to your question, and many others, is in my book, Vocal Recall, A Life in Radio and Voiceovers. I wish I brought a copy with me, but I got dragged out of there with very little notice.
It's great, I've read it.
But thank you, Flint. I mean that sincerely.
No, I mean,
you're actually a grown-up writer person, unlike me. So, no, I'm not going for laughs. I mean, I appreciate it when a professional says something nice about an amateur's writing. But anyway, if you're interested in the book, I'm just going to throw a plug in real quick. Go online to neilbook.com, and all the information is there. neilbook.com. What they did in the movie is they introduced a bunch of new characters, you know this, and they were all played by fairly big-time celebrities. The plan was when we go back to recording the half-hour television stuff, the celebrities will all be gone and other people will do the voices. And I think that's what was going to happen with Springer. But we recorded 3 or 4 episodes with me doing Springer before the movie went into production, and somewhere up the line somebody said, "Well, we've already got this guy and it's not that big a role, but let the kid do it, what the hell." It's got to be one of the luckiest breaks in my career, because that is such a beloved character. And I've got to ask, as long as I'm up here, who the hell wrote that great line for him? Do you guys remember? Do you remember the line? I've got better things to do tonight than die. So, who wrote that? Do you know?
It wasn't me.
Did you? Thank you.
No, yeah.
Thank you. I also have a book. Available now. And if you're not interested in this, ask about my jams and jellies and aluminum siding.
Cameron, I don't think anyone here can hate you or blame you for killing Optimus Prime, because I think everyone here deep down knows that we would not take away that moment for anything, because as devastating as it was, it is one of the best, purest, most dramatic, and I think beautiful moments in the history of this franchise. So I do not sue you or hate you for killing Optimus Prime. I thank you for killing Optimus Prime. It's one of the greatest, I think it's one of the most defining moments of this franchise ever, and it's one of the best written ones. So, Paul, I mean, it's great to have you here, because I mean, it makes sense, because you were one of the few characters that survived the great Autobot purge.
Yeah.
I mean, Perceptor didn't like the fight, so I mean, him not getting killed in battle made sense, right?
I didn't hear that last bit because of it.
Because Perceptor was a pacifist, so him not dying in battle made sense. He didn't like to fight.
But he didn't. But he did when he had to.
Right.
Save yourself, bastard. I gotta say very quickly. I told someone earlier. I did a Comic-Con in San Antonio, and there were a lot of military down there, and there was a guy who was in his. He said he was 9 years old when he saw the movie, and he said, "You guys made me cry in that movie," and he said, "And you especially, because you said," and then I said, "This guy, he's a sergeant, and he was in the Air Force," and I said, "Oh, I know what you're talking about." When I said, "I fear the wounds are fatal," and the man teared up, just like that, just like that. And I'm not exaggerating. He was like, "Okay, all right, fine, yeah." So that's what you're talking about.
Right.
And when things hit us as young people like that, somebody's doing something right up here, writers. You know, somebody knew what they were doing, whether it was by Hasbro or not, whoever made those choices. It was the right thing to do.
And for the writers and producers, did you ever become aware that because Japan didn't get the movie until later, they continued the story of the original series sort of off in another direction? And it was so for the late 80s and early 90s, there was like a whole other storyline of those characters that American viewers never got to see. I was wondering if you ever became aware of that.
No, I mean, really, when this was over, you know, basically, I mean, I certainly, you know, tuned out until I did the game script for the first Bayformer movie, and then did a couple other game iterations of Transformers. That thing, Treyarch tried to do one, and then Jagex did one. I think that came out. I don't know. I think they had some troubles. And then till Chris Metzen and I did Autocracy, you know, that was really it. So I was utterly unaware of whatever happened afterwards.
I try to limit my ignorance to one continent at a time.
Well, I kind of want to echo much of what was just said, actually. He stole a little bit of my thunder, some really good points. I think of people of like sort of famous serendipitous discoveries in the history, like, you know, Louis Pasteur was not setting out to save 1 billion lives when he discovered penicillin. It was an accident. And I think, you know, the way that you guys sort of beat yourselves up over, I didn't kill Optimus Prime, I was made to do it. I'm not sure exactly where it kind of came from, but I think you should realize that it is a super important part of why, like, there's something about tragedies that sort of make it stick with us. That Optimus Prime, the hero of our childhoods, died the way he did, created the lasting thing that made a truck that turns into a giant robot be, you know, like, you've got 1,000 people and you'll go to 1,000 more, you know, you'll meet many thousands of others that were, you know, again, very serendipitous. Like, it might have been by accident, but I think it's largely because of those sort of tragic moments in there that make it really stand out with us. You shouldn't beat yourself up over it.
Oh, no, nobody's really beating themselves up. But the other thing too, before the moment passes, you got to give a lot to Nelson Shin. This is an extremely collaborative medium. And you know, if Nelson Shin does, how do you have a robot die? Okay, I mean, just think about that. For him to figure out, well, we put him in black and white. Okay, you know, just stuff like that. I mean, he was a director. You know, the music cues have to be right, the voices have to be right. Everybody has to do everything right for something like that to work. But I agree. I don't think we'd be here if Optimus Prime hadn't died. I think that was the moment. You know, I mean, because, you know, has anybody been in a mass convention lately? You know, GoBots, anybody been in the GoBots convention? You haven't been to GoBot?
Watch it, I'm a GoBot.
I bet you are a GoBot, as a matter of fact, yeah. You know, I mean, that's the point. You know, it was a poignant moment for a generation.
At the risk of sounding semi-serious, I think Transformers survives with as many permutations as it has for one underlying reason. We are all Transformers. From the time we're children, we are wishing that we could transform to deal with the unfairness that we see, the injustices that we see, the kind of casual abuse that children suffer. We recognize that there is something right. We recognize that there's a reason to hope. And Transformers, we are Transformers. We all want to transform from little kids into adults who are responsible, who can correct the ills. And this is an evergreen story. We recognize it. Anybody that subscribes to any interest in Transformers is, to me, always a good human being with an imagination that embraces all, with a kind of forgiving nature that is admirable. So I always see people here as peers in the same kind of club, recognizing the majesty of life and the necessity of change for the better. So I salute all of you, because to me, we're in the same boat where we see a tomorrow that's better and brighter.
Amen. Wow.
I don't really have a question. That's really the point. And thank you for all the happy endings that happened in Transformers. We thank you, and for the tragic moments that bring us to days like today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Afternoon, gentlemen. My question is, when I was watching the DVD, the commentary part, back then, the movie rating was either PG or R. There was no PG-13 at the time. And the original idea you guys had was more brutal than what got released, especially the first 20 minutes when everyone gets blown away. Was there any ideas of bringing that back, remaking it, re-releasing the anniversary edition? Because I really want to see how you guys originally... I know you guys, as the commentaries, you would describe what was happening, but you guys ever thought about actually remaking it for the original idea?
Well, there wasn't, I mean, Ron wrote the first draft of the script. That wasn't like there was some original idea. What there was 1 minute where Jay McCall and I had a scene where like the entire 85 product line got wiped out in a charge of light brigade. They decided it was a little harsh, yeah. But that may exist in some box in my storage. I think you leave that alone. Let's build the next thing. You know what I mean?
Well, there were originally 2 drafts. The first draft I wrote, Joe and Tom, Griffin and McCall, said I made the bad guys too interesting. Let's do another one where the good guys were more interesting. So Michael Bay, to his credit, stole from both versions and continued to do so, and I wish the Writers Guild had been involved. I'd have made a few bucks. I know that's small-minded, but hey, it can only be philosophical to a certain extent.
Thank you.
My question is, I understand that sometimes you can't fit all the characters in the movie, but my question is, why wasn't Snarl in the movie with the rest of the Dinobots?
I have no idea. Honestly, yeah. I mean, it's like the difference between animation and live action is live action. You cast a bunch of people. Like if this were a live action movie, like the Snarl would have been sitting in the back of the room and we said, "Hey, Snarl, line up with the other Dinobots and we'll put you in the scene." An animation, if you know, for whatever reason he doesn't get drawn or written, you know, Snarl just doesn't make it there. However, you could do what Snarl was really doing while the movie took place story, which, you know, might be worth somebody doing. You're gonna go write it, I'm serious. I mean, if nothing other than fanfic, I mean, give Snarl a job.
Thank you.
Tonight. Imagine.
I have an observation. I don't want to be rude or anything, but the Transformers movie and the movie, John Wayne's movie, The Cowboys, has this ever been brought up to y'all that it's kind of similar in a lot of ways, where John Wayne, Optimus Prime, he's a old timer, he comes in, he does this thing, and midway through the movie, he's gunned down. And he's got all these young guys, the young cowboys, and when he's gunned down, they basically are given the movie, and the whole movie plays out with the boys kind of avenging John Wayne and getting through this task. And I'm just curious, does anything maybe somewhere watching it at some point say, that's kind of a interesting concept. I wonder where I could take that in Transformers. Since John Wayne,
maybe some, you know, prenatal moment. I saw that movie, but I mean, for me, John Wayne and was always Davy Crockett, and Optimus was that John Wayne. I mean, but yeah, then again, I'm quite sure somewhere in my childhood I saw every John Wayne movie ever made. You know,
it's just something. It bounced out. I was watching. It was on. I was like, my God, this just kind of feels like a little bit like Transformers, which is not a bad thing. I mean, that's not a bad thing. Transformers is fantastic, and the movie goes where no movie really went. So, thank you.
How's it going? I wonder if you could share any anecdotes about Daniel's line, "Oh shit." And was it a alt take? Was it
no.
improv?
It was very deliberate, and they wanted a PG rating.
Okay.
At that moment, it was perceived that if we did an animated movie and had a G rating, that nobody over 3 would go to the movie, and they can't get themselves to the movie. So if you had PG, people thought there might be some stuff in it, and culture has changed. You know, at the time, all the violence we had, people getting killed, that doesn't get you PG. However, one foul word in there gets you a PG, and it was deliberately placed there to get a PG. Because, by the way, it's trivia. Who knows what movie caused PG-13 to happen? Yeah, that's right. So that would happen. That had actually happened before this. So there was PG-13 who didn't want PG-13.
It was the first time any of us had heard a swear word in a movie theater.
Yep. No, that was a very rare thing.
At that age, like, oh shit.
But that was a very conscious. That was not some arbitrary thing that just accidentally arrived in the movie. You know?
They actually cut it in the UK, not in the UK version of the cinema.
Sorry, what?
They cut the swear from the UK really.
Yeah, no, that was considered to be a risky thing, but they just did not want a G rating.
They cut it in the U.S. release as well, and then all the years later, everybody's looking. This room's looking for the DVD. Like, we gotta find the original.
Hey, I got the bootleg version with shit in it. This guy with a trench coat going around sawing. Yeah, exactly.
I think this is the first time I've heard a philosophical discussion about the uses of shit. Richard Pryor, the late, which was a friend of mine, he could say shit 800 different ways. The shit in the Transformers was basic. That's all I can say.
Here's your other trivia. What movie were we really kind of homaging when we did that? Very common movie a few years earlier where somebody's jumping off a cliff yelling shit.
7 Samurai Get Constipated. That was
Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. There, how's that for you? You're getting trivia.
Yes.
Hi. I'm just asking this because someone doesn't want to come up here and ask it himself, David. I just wanted to know, like, how you guys, you guys were all about, like, the same age, the same, like, talent, having done a lot of stuff before, how it felt having, like, a much younger kid coming in there and recording with you guys during the movie.
We tolerated him.
Like, that's what I figured. Yeah. Come on, stand up, David. Say hi. There's our Daniel.
Yeah, there he is, all grown up.
He's still the kid in the group, though. It's like,
He really is the kid of the group, and I asked him, why don't you come up here and, like, ask him? And he's like, no, I don't want to. It's like, he's so cute. Everyone say hi. Everyone say hi one more time to him. He's there covering his face. Hi. He's gonna kill me. It was nice meeting you guys. If you find my body, he didn't.
I'll give you $1 if you say shit.
That's not my rate.
Hi, sorry, a bit of a random question. What was your reaction when you saw the touch used in Boogie Nights? And do you know anything about how it ended up in that movie, in the context that it did?
No, I don't know anything about it. Yeah.
I never saw that. I've known Paul Thomas Anderson since he was 7 years old. And when he was in the 11th grade, he made a little movie in high school called The Dirk Diggler Story, which was the story of a gay porn star who dies of an overdose. It was hilarious. It was intended to be hilarious, and he won a full tuition scholarship at several different schools. His father, who was the voice of ABC and the voice of Budweiser, Ernie Anderson, said, talk to the little shit, he thinks he's Fellini. So I went to Paul and I said, your dad wants me to talk to you. He says, about what? I said, I don't know. How long do you want to be in this business? He said, what do you mean? I said, how long you want to write? How long you want to direct? How long you want to... He says, all my life. Why? I said, then you better read something other than comic books and watch something other than porn, because the worst thing that can happen to you is you'll be a prisoner of an early success. You'll have a big success and you won't know what to do next. I think that's what happened to him. But Boogie Nights was the Dirk Diggler story made longer. And I suggest if you want a really good time, find the Dirk Diggler story on YouTube. You can find it. It is hysterical. It's brilliant. Anyway, true story.
Wait a second, he did this when he was 11?
No, I've known him since he was 7.
Okay, good. Yeah,
we're not about numbers.
My choice of material is going to be a porn star commits suicide. I was thinking that when I was 11.
When it comes to characters, there was the Dinobots and the aerial bots. Were there any characters that you wanted to be in the actual series that never made it? This for the panel.
Well, the actors wouldn't have even known they existed. True. By the time it got to us, it was set in stone. So the writers will have to deal with that.
In terms of the TV series, we were given the characters that we'd be working with. So it wasn't that we would come up with a great robot concept or transformer concept. There was this new toy line coming out that was an aerial bot, or was a Dinobot or whatever, and we would then work with them. That was our repertory company to work into episodes.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I mean, we'd get like, model sheets and stuff like that, because, the toys preceded. There were a couple weird exceptions to that, but the toys always preceded the material. The trick answer to your question would be, we always wanted to do a crossover. I always wanted to see the Joe characters. The closest we ever got was Marissa Fairborn.
Right.
And Hector Ramirez.
I always kept asking Wally if I could read for Dildo Bot. It was never.
I wanted to be Grimlock or Prime, but it didn't work because my voice was up here all the time.
We are at the 10-minute mark. I'm hoping to get the last 3 in. I think so.
Everybody talk very fast.
Okay.
Not yet, but keep that in mind.
Don't have a question. I have more so of a statement. Ron, we love you. We forgive you.
I can sleep at last.
I just want to say it felt really good to grow up in the 80s because we had this, not only we had Transformers, we had a whole other genre of cartoons that not only just entertained us, they educated us. It is so missed in today's cartoons, and I just want to thank y'all for being a part of that, influencing that, and just reveling in that to get us to the point where we are today. I wish they would have passed, that when the baton was passed, that it continued. Because now we live in a society where everyone is so sensitive to everything. It's nice to be able to watch something and escape the reality of where we live in right now. And I think that's what it was all about back then, because no one wanted to hear about the reality of what you live in your cartoons, or even in your TV shows. I mean, it just felt nice. Like I said at the beginning, it felt real good to grow up in the 80s because of that. Thanks.
Sorry, I forgot to mention this earlier, but Daniel spiked some from the movie. There's a scene of him in Japan, in a Japan series, where he beats Trypticon on his own, the giant Decepticon-like dragon. So, thanks for creating that character so we could get that moment later.
Well, actually, all right, here's more trivia for you. Rod knows the answer to this, and Doug will know the answer to this. What was the stimulus for a Daniel character in the Transformers, the movie? Well, who had a son named Daniel that was exactly that age at exactly that moment? It was Joe McCall's son.
It was Joe McCall.
Yeah. Daniel was a real person who became an animated person.
But I don't know if anyone knows the answer to this question, but to this day, my favorite Megatron line is still such heroic nonsense. So many great, the movie to me is a classic, and it's so well written, but does anyone remember who can take credit for that line, or who wrote that line?
That was me.
We were sitting there and
off the top of my head.
We had another bad line. Paul was sitting in the recording session, and he threw out the line, and we went with it. Because Ron and I are thinking, hey, we get credit for it anyway, so let's just soak this actor for his line. No, seriously, a lot of the best lines in there were things actors came up with when we were. We just riffed through us, and more in the series than in the movie. The movie was very straight-laced, but the series, a lot of times the actors would just be warming up. And if you've ever heard voice actors warm up, you're in the blue room at the Comedy Store, at least in the 80s. Now people be arrested for talking like that, but back in those days, I agree, by the way, I want the 80s back. But anyway, that's the other thing. You think of this as a hyper-collaborative medium. Somebody's name goes on a script, somebody's, and all that's true. But at a lot of points, everybody involved chipped in something. It's the sum of all the people who were involved. It's not just, who happens to be sitting on the back.
That's what I've always said about both these shows, Transformers and G.I. Joe. Somehow the combination of people they put together, either by luck, accident, or design, the whole became greater than the sum of its parts.
That is absolutely. You remember what those recording sessions? You guys describe what one of those was like. Because I think the audience is actually kind of fascinated by that question. What was it like? Start with Chris Solana and Blink's Tooth out, and work from there.
We had an amazing group of people who were, probably half of us were insane. Roger C. Carmel, I'm not sure that you know, who was
The Trouble with Troops.
And Chuck.
Chuck McCann.
Chuck McCann. These guys were hilarious, incredibly crazy people. We laughed as much as anything I've ever done before or since. We loved being there, and the wonderful thing about about the Transformers is we were all in the room. It wasn't like you're in there by yourself. Now you're 9 times out of 10, you're in that room alone, which is fine, but you miss the electricity, you miss the spontaneity.
Oh no, that's what it did, because you'd hear that in the performance afterwards. I mean, it was just all these ridiculous people in there. I mean, they just start going and like, you know, it's like, where did this energy come from?
Well,
I mean,
Chris would be doing his stand-up routine in Starscream's voice.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like I don't think Hasbro's gonna like that. You know, and I guess Chris's stand-up routine as well. Yeah, you could probably catch some Chris stuff on YouTube.
But he'd be doing it in the room too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You know, what everybody was.
Everybody. They'd all be in character, but doing shtick.
And was there any voice that Frank Welker couldn't do?
No.
I mean, I remember we were doing the Insecticons, and it's like, you know, okay, you're a robot, but you're an insect. You know what? Can you put a little bit more cricket in there and a little less, you know, a little less mosquito? I mean, he could do anything. There would be more cricket, less mosquito, and there were no vocoders in there. There was no funny business. This was the guy's voice. I mean, I remember just being struck by Insecticon Day. I'll never forget that as a matter of fact.
Well, I love actors, and actors are fabulous, and I am and have been an actor. But when Robert Downey Jr. appeared on David Letterman right after Iron Man opened, David Letterman said, that must have been a great script. And Robert Downey said, we threw the script against the wall, and we ad-libbed. And I screamed at the television and said, yeah, ad-lib that part where your pants fly you into the ceiling again.
I can't tell anything that was said, but since we're on like our favorite quotes, my favorite quote from the movie is when Galvatron first comes up to Starscream from the leader, and he's like, "That's bad comedy." Anyway, my question is nothing against like the original cast or voice actors because you guys are amazing, but what really went into, because you had an all-star cast of these new characters going into the movie, like Robert Stack from Unsolved Mysteries, Leonard Nimoy. Eric Idle from Monty Python, like what went into like getting these voices together to portray these new characters?
That was really Joe and Tom, and from what I could tell, these people just magically appeared. But I remember a conversation with Joe McCall, is what I'm talking about, and he was saying, you know, it's great to have all these big name people, but at a certain point, you've exhausted the big names, and it's just whatever they're actually bringing to the performance. And these guys really brought a lot to the performance. The interesting thing about Robert Stack, this is a rerun for anybody who was here last night, but was Robert Stack, you know, he was the guy I was geeked out over because I used to, when I was really good, I'd get to stay up and watch The Untouchables, and I'm sitting here with the real Elliot Ness. And he was saying, I'm kind of nervous about doing the voiceover. You know, how do we do this? I'm sitting there, this is the real Robert Stack, and he's nervous about doing the voiceover. Okay, Unsolved Mysteries came later.
Okay.
He didn't know he was a voiceover guy, and I would argue that he was the template that any voiceover in a creepy Unsolved Mysteries kind of show was set from. I mean, he sounded like the guy from the bottom of the grave when he did that.
And the great Orson Welles, of course.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he'd kind of done stuff before we met him. I mean, it's not like we made Orson Welles. Yeah. By the way, the total non sequitur. But if you want to see simultaneously the most fascinating, arguably the worst, but you know the most riveting, you know, film from a film history point of view, go see The Other Side of the Wind. It's on Netflix. You don't have to go anywhere. Just watch it. It's another film that Orson Welles spent 4 years putting together. It was just released this year by Peter Bogdanovich and Frank Marshall. And then it has a companion documentary. But there's a moment where Peter Bogdanovich, who knew Orson Welles quite well, was talking about the last time he talked to him was like a week before he died. And I was watching this thinking he may have talked to him the exact same day that he recorded Transformers, because there's a reference in the documentary to, I played a giant robot in my last movie. But that's in his daughter's documentary. I played a giant robot in my last, a whole planet robot in my last movie. I think he was not thinking that was the high point of his career, but the truth is, it's probably one of them.
Thanks, guys. Greatest animated movie of all time. For all or one.